Hello and welcome to Future Self Dreaming. My name is Carlos Kukulkaran. Today I have a good friend of mine and spiritual dork named Sharon Bolt who's joined me to inform us about her body of work called Shamanic Energy Training. Hello, Sharon.
Hello, Carlos, and thank you for the great introduction. I was just sharing with Carlos, everyone, that normally I do podcasts, not video. And I did my first Facebook Live yesterday with Shamanic Energy Training UK, which is Andrew. And we had about 10 messages saying, you two are so dorky. And I was like, hey, that's obviously our video medicine. So give you a dorky transmission today of all things spiritual and that you enjoy it.
I'm all about the spiritual dorkiness. It's great. Yeah, well, it makes you relatable, doesn't it?
Exactly. If I can do it, anyone can.
That's right. Yeah, you know, it's when you said that, like, it made me actually think about my first interactions with you, you know, like and judging a book by its cover, I guess, you know, because like sometimes you meet somebody for the first time and it's easy not to know what's going on behind the scenes, and I know that there's a lot going on behind the scenes with you. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Well, we can touch on that for a moment, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
The let's call it spiritual industry, New Age community. It has programs like every other industry that you have to look a certain way, dress a certain way, and even speak a certain way. And I love busting all those programs.
Yeah.
And so, and you know, people, I just wear whatever, Carlos, and eat whatever and do whatever, and it can really annoy and trigger some people because I don't feel like I should have to live according to a set of programs and rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I guess, given the topic that we're going to speak about today, kind of vaguely being under the umbrella of shamanism, is kind of all about living outside the rules and the consensus agreements and whatnot that we might share. So that's probably a good way to start. You know, I thinking about this talk that we're having, you know, a lot of my presentations that I've done so far have been around the concepts of shamanism and mythology and psychology and spirituality, and what was I going to say about that? Yeah, so which is why I wanted to talk to you today about that arena. And I think one of the things that I've learned, the most valuable lessons I've learned about shamanism, is to utilize whatever is happening in the moment, and that saying that there are no problems, there's only situations, that there's always a million ways of dealing with a situation, and it's up to your own creativity to find solutions to those problems, you know?
Absolutely. And your imagination. The bridge that leads towards spirit work is actually imagination, which we're greatly lacking in our society. And so make it up until it actually becomes real.
Yeah. So, you know, for anybody who's watching, I wanted to talk to you about, you've shared a little bit previously about the history of how your shamanic energy training has evolved. And, you know, I thought it might be nice to share that story with people. I know that you studied Taoism in Korea many years ago, and that led on to plant medicine work and a multitude of trainings that you've done. So yeah, where should we kick that journey off for you?
Oh, let's start. I'll try to be quick, everyone. So I'll try to make it fun and dorky for you guys, so it's not too boring. It all started with Stuart Wilde. Not many people in Australia have heard about Stuart Wilde. Do you know who he is?
I do. You know, I've got some interesting stories about Stuart Wilde. Yeah, I loved his work. He was a real kind of trickster, urban shaman. And a buddy of mine one day was actually on a skateboard cruising down Bondi Junction towards Bondi Beach, and I think he was following behind. He's told me this story a couple of times, but he was following behind a limousine, and this guy that was in the limousine got out and said, "Get in," and it was Stuart Wilde. And and so then my buddy spent the day cruising around with Stuart Wilde, and he didn't know who he was at that time. You know, he just said, "Oh, I'm this author, blah, 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 and then later, realised who he was. And he did live in the area where I live near Byron Bay for some period of time as well. So what was your introduction or relationship to Stuart?
I was gifted his books by a friend of mine in London.
Mm-hmm.
And I became obsessed with him. So I tracked him down to when he was doing lectures. And, he's a trickster and he's crazy. And he really pokes the audience. And at the end of the whole spiritual talks, which, by the way, people would walk out and say, what did he just say? No one could actually understand what he was saying half the time. He would say, let's all go to the pub. Yay. And drink a lot. And I was like, who is this amazing? He was so magnetic. So, of course, I went up to him and I said, Stuart, I want to learn from you. Please teach me. And he said, you have no concept of energy at the moment. You don't understand it. And for me to train you properly, you need to do Qigong. You actually need to train with energy. It's like, that's the basics. So it wasn't that I had an interest in Qigong, it's that someone that I really respected told me to go and do it. And so I tried different methods of Qigong for like a year or two, came across the Koreans, and it was love at first sight. And I was basically a Taoist monk living in London in a very, we had an ashram. And so we all lived together. And it was a very traditional method of training with a teacher, as in chopping wood, carry water. So you were assigned a master that you were with 24/7. And you had to do whatever the master said you had to do. So clean floors, dust, teach Qigong 3 times a day. And you couldn't answer back. You couldn't have fits. You just had to do the work. And basically the work is a breakdown of the ego and the things you're attached to that you need to let go of. So at the time, I was attached to shoes. They threw out all my shoes away by accident. They went, you should have been donated to charity. And I used to work in advertising, so I had a bag full of designer shoes. And to me, that was going to be the deposit for my home if I eventually returned to Australia. So that was literally thrown away. And then they said, you can't dye your hair anymore. You can't wear makeup. You got to wear this baggy pink outfit. And eventually you have to strip the layers until you get to the core of who you are. And so that Taoist training, I owe a lot to. I'm so grateful for it. It was tough, but it was worth it. And so after the Taoist training, I decided to train in, all the one-to-one therapies because I left the organization. And the reason why I left is because I then realized, as amazing as it was, it had a church element to it, or a religious element to it, in that you couldn't go to God unless you went via the master. And I was like, no, I can't do hierarchy anymore. And so I was looking for something that didn't have that hierarchy, and that's where shamanism came in. So shamanism was an interest while studying kinesiology, hypnotherapy, NLP, psychotherapy, everything else, and building a clinic. So shamanic energy training now is basically Qigong on steroids, as in we do the Qigong class within a medicine wheel. A medicine wheel amplifies everything in the space. So to train your energy within a medicine wheel and in a group setting is extremely powerful. And that's why it's called Shamanic Energy Training. So we have 2 branches of the school. One branch teaches the Qigong side of things so that people can fund spiritual work with their energy. The other side is the, let's call it, shamanic spirit work trainings so that people can do this work one-to-one and run their own subtle plant ceremonies.
Yeah, I find that really fascinating that Stuart was a catalyst in that way, for your journey, telling you needed to go and do that energy training.
100%.
Yeah, as I'm sure he...
Energy, you don't have the power to do anything.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you can't perceive energy, and if you're not intuitive with your energy, and if you don't know what energy is yours, what energy is someone else's, then you have no business in a healing room.
Yeah.
Right.
So where did that lead then from doing the Taoist Korean Qigong training, like what followed after that? You said you did a bunch of courses.
Yeah, what actually followed is I left the organization. I haven't actually shared this publicly, but I will.
Mm-hmm.
You had to do 3 years celibacy training
Mm-hmm.
as a Taoist, because you had to learn how to control and manage your sexual energy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it did have a sexual energy component. And one of my masters, I did not finish my 3 years of celibacy training. He started a relationship with me that was highly inappropriate. And I take responsibility for that as well within the training. And so when the bigger masters found out, he was sent back to Korea to start from the very bottom. And I had a choice whether to start again my 3 years of celibacy training
Mm-hmm.
or to leave. So I chose to leave.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it didn't feel right anymore anyway. Because after they do the 3 years of celibacy training, they really believe that you need to, that's only when you can start doing the tantric arts type training like Mantak Chia does. Because you've then mastered your own sexual energy body and energy field, you can now move into sexual arts. And so, yeah, I left. And because I left the organization, I didn't have insurance. So I started doing a Qigong teacher training course with a Chinese-based system. And I needed money, and I needed to get back into advertising. Mm-hmm. And so I hadn't been in advertising for a couple of years. I was like, how am I going to get back into advertising? I even tried getting jobs at Starbucks. No one would hire me. They're like, you've been in a Taoist monastery for 3 years. What are we going to do with you? Luckily, I got hired in an advertising agency who thought my whole journey was hilarious and that I was a good character to bring in. And put me in charge, wait for it, of the Oreo account across the Middle East. And so, yes, Oreo biscuits. So in my day job, I was making commercials, encouraging kids in the Middle East to have Oreos for breakfast. I know everyone, it's terrible, it's evil. And then in my side job, I was learning a different kind of Qigong with another school and learning to be a kinesiologist and everything else.
Yeah. Look, we've all had a few interesting side hustles to support this shamanic journey. So
absolutely,
it could be worse than Oreos.
Absolutely. And I'm very honest with everyone. You know, people are like, what is going to happen now? I'm like, from the time of leaving the Taoist Center, studying kinesiology, Qigong, shamanism, until I went full time and I could support myself outside of corporate, was a 7-year journey of working every weekend, working, after hours, assisting in lots of other people's weekends to learn how to hold space better. So this was a serious 7-year hustle where I didn't watch TV. I didn't socialize much. I was literally just working, studying, helping other people, hustling. That was it, 7 years. Yeah. So it felt like I was back in the Taoist Center again. It felt like I did a 14-year hardcore training of doing everything at once.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned your partner in crime, Andrew, earlier. So he's currently in Australia, and I have done some work with him previously. So at what point did you meet Andrew and start doing training with him?
I was in the Taoist Center when he arrived. And he's 7 years younger than I am. And so when he arrived, he was like the baby of the group. And he'd just come over from Germany. And because we were a little bit more senior, we always find what energetic thing they're addicted to that we need to release. So mine was shoes, and we had to find his, and his was frankfurters and food. And so, we starved him to get rid of his food addiction. But yeah, so we were living together sometimes in the Taoist centers or working together. And then we've been friends since that time. We've been friends for 16, 17 years. Yeah. And working together as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys traveled to South America to do some training over there?
Absolutely. So we were introduced to plant medicine shamanism in Europe. And with the Qigong training, we're like, wow, what's this, right? We need to know more. So we both went to Peru to explore this further and do some training there as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, there's a current campaign called Thank You Plant Medicine.
I've seen that. I don't know much about it, though. What's happening?
I don't know much about it, but obviously people are saying thank you, plant medicine. And look, I'm very grateful to plant medicine, but I want to change it to what the fuck plant medicine. Because as amazing as it was, looking back, it's also a very seductive journey.
Mm-hmm.
And even with all the Qigong training I had and all the therapeutic training I had,
Mm-hmm.
I was literally like a lamb to the slaughter because I didn't have the shamanic training that I think people need to have before they go in there.
Which is, how would you describe that? What would you say that people need to have?
Shamanic practice. So, for example, if you're going to work with a spirit like ayahuasca,
Mm-hmm.
a very prominent master plant spirit, she be herself sometimes. What are they doing here? They can't even talk to a tree, but they come to talk to me.
Yeah.
They don't even know who they are, but they're here. As you know, plant spirits expand your own consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only when you've worked on your own consciousness for a long time that their actual genuine blueprint starts to imprint in your field. So if you have done zero work on your consciousness, you're just going to get more of what you already know, but just as an expanded version.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be, when I say lamb to the slaughter, you don't know what to do in the space. You don't know how to work with a spirit animal. You don't know who your allies are. You don't know when someone's psychically attacking you. You don't know when it's someone else's projection. You don't know when you're vomiting for yourself or someone else, because you haven't had the energetic training to be able to discern all the energies in the room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that description of plant medicines, the likes of ayahuasca being very seductive, was probably one of the first sort of descriptions that I was given of ayahuasca maybe 20 or more years ago, before I had any idea about that plant. And yeah, somebody described it as, recruiting slaves for its agenda as well, and so there seems to be reciprocal relationships going on with plant spirits and human consciousness. It's a two-way street.
Yes. I look at it and look, everyone has their opinion about the master plants because it's such a powerful journey when you go into it. I think as humans, we just go, oh, it's this. So you have to take the time to step back, examine what other people say, assess what experiences you had, and then try to sit with it from a more neutral perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The best way I can understand it, and I've tried to make sense of it for myself, is just like we have a light being Carlos and a shadow Carlos, the same applies for the plant spirits. So we would have the most angelic version of ayahuasca, but we would also have the most demonic or astral version of ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm.
Which one you connect into depends on the frequency that you bring into the space. Because if you look at most people's journeys, a huge percentage of people say, I've met her, she says I'm the chosen one, I have to begin serving right now, I'm better than the shaman that was serving, I'm the best person in the world. That's a virus, right? Some kind of parasitic energetic virus that is there in the astral. And so when we drink and we don't know what we're doing, we can easily get plugged into different viruses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a fascinating concept because you see the same types of neuroses develop, in people. Many people thinking that they're the savior or whatnot. Like, it's actually, what's the term for it? The Jerusalem syndrome for people who visit the chosen land.
I've had it too. We've all had it, but it's very important to go, oh shit, that was a virus. Mm-hmm. And to forgive yourself and say, fuck me, now I know that this can happen in plant spirit ceremonies. It even happens with cacao. I'm not just talking master plants. Most people that drink cacao all start speaking a very similar way. saying exactly the same things because they're tapping into the astral version of the plant. It's only when you can go past the astral version that you get the true teachings of the plant spirit in their core essence. And these teachings are not the same thing everyone else is saying. These are brand new teachings that the plant spirit is gifting you.
Mm-hmm. So what's that book? I have got it, Plant Spirit Medicine. Is that it? Something like that? You're probably familiar with it.
I have actually gone out of my way not to read any plant spirit medicine or communication books.
Okay.
So my whole exploration has been, I want to meet your highest aspect. You teach me.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have the knowledge and learning and techniques in place that if a virus gets injected, if they start telling me lies, if they start tricking me, I'm going to find out eventually. I may not find out straight away, but I'm going to find out eventually.
Okay.
It's like people. People forget that, if I'm going to make a new group of friends, do you trust everything they say straight away?
Well, me personally, no.
No. You watch people, you observe them, you look how, I'll be saying, if I've met you for the first time, I'm like, okay, this is Carlos as a consciousness. And I want to interact with Carlos on an ongoing shamanic basis. What's he like with women? What's he like with men? What's he like with children? Is everyone else saying the same story? Okay, he seems okay. I'm going to get to know him better. And as I get to know you better, you start to trust me. So you start revealing more of your true self to me because you're now opening your heart. You're now being vulnerable. I see the plant spirit relationship in exactly the same way.
Yep.
Right? We're both getting to know each other. We're both getting to trust each other. And it's only when that trust is established that the true plant spirit, it's like a key. There's guardians to all these keys in the spirit world, and you're not going to get the key just by showing up and drinking something. You have to put the effort in.
Mm-hmm. So is this plant spirit communication something that you incorporate into your trainings currently?
Absolutely. I have everything is about the plants in my eyes. I love them so much. So I teach a plant spirit communication workshop, and I do a 1-week training on plant spirit subtle ceremony in Bali. So how to work with the subtle plants with the same templates that you would find within the master plants. So when a subtle plant gets the same amount of love, attention, and respect that a master gets, everything expands to different levels.
And what are these subtle plant medicines that you're working with?
Cacao, blue lotus, rose, tobacco, subtle but not so subtle. Any plant. Any plant that's a subtle plant that doesn't cause a psychoactive effect can be a ceremonial hero.
And how do you go about
profound effects, by the way, from a subtle plant?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, drinking yerba mate at the moment and communing with that as we're speaking, and how do you go about introducing people to developing that relationship if they've got no concept of that?
The same way I did. I had a friend who kept saying to me, this was in London, all the trees in Putney talk to me. And I thought, she's crazy. All the trees in Putney talk to her. Because, by the way, one thing that we like making clear, and we mentioned this yesterday with Andrew, I wasn't born with 1 million psychic gifts or activated overnight or touched by the Pleiadians when I was in bed and woken up a starseed, activated starseed. I've had to learn this the old-fashioned way, trial, error, persistence, and tenacity. And so when people used to say these things to me, I used to think they're batshit crazy. And so she said to me, trees, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try this. I'm going to walk past this tree every day and go, hello. Hello.
Yep.
6 months later, hello. One day, it responded. And you go, oh, wow, this shit is real. So now it's so ingrained that even if I'm watering the garden, I might have the 2 trees in my little backyard, like 2 tree spirits come out and hug me or play with me. And it's a full-on interaction. But this has taken 9-10 years of opening this up. So I say this because I think people sometimes give up too quickly with shamanic work. They're like, oh, it doesn't work for me. It didn't happen. I'm going to give up. This is what initiations are for. This is why you need to develop power. You don't give up. You just keep knocking on that door. And so to a beginner, I would say find a local tree and just keep saying hello. And I sit here, with your back against the tree. Speak out loud. Hi, my name is Carlos. I want to get to know you better. I'm just going to sit here, hang out, and eventually something will happen in your strongest psychic sense. So you may see the spirit, feel it, smell it, hear it, whatever the case may be. So there's a giant oak nearby that's really special. And I approached it. It was a bit standoffish because it doesn't like humans very much and it hasn't been looked after very well. So what I started doing was I would take my yoga mat and lie down at the edge where the last branch ended. I would just lie on the edge and I'd bring a little gift and I'd be like, you don't have to be friends with me, but I'm just going to hang out here. Hang out. And I probably did that over 3 months. I'm just hanging out. Fast forward and we had, I'm going to share it. We had a hand fasting ceremony a few months ago, which is the same as with a human hand fasting, connecting our ongoing relationship and commitment for the next year. I have then found out, though, that oak actually is traditionally associated with weddings and the goddess, and so they ask everyone to marry them. So I didn't feel very special after that when somebody said, because I then started introducing that tree to other people, and I would bring some of the branches to my ceremonies. And during the drum journey, people would say, oh, Sharon, the Oak King cracked onto me or tried to marry me. And I was like, what? Here I was thinking we were in this beautiful monogamous relationship, and he's chasing all the girls in energy training.
So the spirit of oak is a bit of a player.
A bit of a player, absolutely. That's why he rules the summer. He's the Oak King.
So how much of like your emotional body and like what you're feeling in relation to these plants is key to this communication with them?
Your body has to feel it. If it's in your head, you're working with the imagination until it becomes embodied. When it becomes embodied, it becomes real. And how do I know this? Because sometimes I'm not specifically trying to communicate with a plant, but the energy of the plant will reach out and start to envelop me. And so it's a feeling, right? It's a feeling that starts to move across your body. This is why the Qigong was so helpful. Thank you, Stuart Wilde. And it's heart-based communication. It's not an intellectual experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I have some trees in my backyard where I drink tea every morning, and I'm as the seasons change, aware of the different transformations that they go through and the varying relationship that I seem to have developed while sitting there drinking tea each morning. You mentioned before, like a lot of this. By
the way, before you go on, they love gifts. Tie a ribbon, put a crystal next to the bark. And notice, just like humans, they love compliments. Hey, you're looking good. Oh, wow. Your leaves are changing now. Aren't you handsome in autumn? You got to flirt with plants.
This is interesting. I went to, do you know Roman Light? Have you met Roman before?
No.
Yeah, he's a buddy of mine. I met him some years ago, and he's moved up to the area from Sydney. He's originally from France, and I'm going to interview him at some stage soon, hopefully, but he gave a little presentation up in Bangalore last week that I went to, and I think it was while he was spending time in is it Damanhur over in Italy, the spiritual community over there.
I know which one you mean. Yeah.
I think it was there that he first got introduced to this technology that you can hook up to plants and it will translate them into sound, basically, and so he's got all that technology, and it's amazing listening and feeling, the sound that's coming through this technology, and also noticing how the plants respond to what's going on in the room. You know, the attention that's being given to them, whether they're being watered, the interactions that are happening between people, and the emotional energy that may be going on between them. And it just, I mean, it's something that obviously you can develop a sensitivity to just naturally, but certainly when we have got that, the sounds of the plants translated through a speaker system, your attention is brought to that, and you notice that interaction in a different way.
100%. Anything that brings that relationship to life is going to help people, because it sounds like such a crazy concept, having a tree as a friend. But I find that with my students, what happens to all the people I've trained is it then becomes so sensitive. They're like, oh my God, Sharon, I'm having some maca in my superfood and the spirit of maca wants to talk to me. Like sometimes I just want to have a smoothie, right? Because the channels are fully open. And so sometimes, even if you don't, once you have the channel open, even if you don't particularly want to develop a relationship with a certain plant, but it's in a supplement, herb, superfood, it may come in. And it's actually quite special and exciting. The other thing I love about plants is that they are, out of all the spirits in the spirit world, they, in my experience, have given me the most gifts. Yeah. And it's never without a doubt, it was from them. So they are huge gifters, and gifters in this reality. And so that's why I get so excited about them. Yeah. You
know, you mentioned earlier and in chats that we've had previously, you know, about the importance of ceremony in terms of shamanism and in perhaps, you know, developing a deeper relationship with these plant spirits. Can you tell me more about how you incorporate that into your work?
Okay, so ceremony, look, when there's a group connecting to a plant spirit together, that group energy raises the energy. And we're in a space of no time. So can you imagine what it's like? I'll tell you about a ceremony we did in Bali with a local plant. It was moringa. Okay, so we're doing a ceremony for moringa as an example. And we're all drinking moringa. We're all in a medicine wheel together. We're all talking to moringa. And all of a sudden, this plant spirit was like, is this for me? This whole shebang for me? And it wasn't just myself that got that information. It was other people in the group. It was kind of like shy, like what the hell's going on? Am I this special? And so the ones that get ignored all the time and don't have ceremony are a little bit like humans. Imagine if all of a sudden we threw you a party, Carlos, and we're like going, Carlos, like a big birthday party, like a significant birthday party. Carlos, you're the best. We all love you. This is freaking amazing. You'd be like, oh my God, you're digging me. I'm going to dig you. I'm going to give back to you people. Because you all want a relationship with me, and you even opened the ceremony for me. You've changed me forever. So sometimes when I do ceremony with these subtle plants like hibiscus, marigold, moringa, or even like rosemary, they never forget it. I can walk anywhere around Melbourne. If there's a rosemary plant nearby, it'll be like, shh, shh. Like, what? Oh my God, there's some rosemary. Hello, my friend, my ceremonial friend who created this experience for me. And so you have a very strong, powerful ally, right? Because in the spirit world, they're all equally powerful. There's not, this one's a master, that one's not a master, they're equally powerful. It's just us that decide that this one is better than that one because of this. That's not the case, right? And so ceremony allows all of us to step out of real time and actually commune with the sacred, which we don't do enough. And I really was reminded of this when I went to Hong Kong and did some ceremonies there. The people in Hong Kong are used to tea ceremony, right? And so I took one of the way I do ceremony in Australia to Hong Kong, which has a lot of rituals and a lot of things to do because, you know, the Westerners get bored. They need things to do, right? And I found that they don't need things to do. They're quite happy to sit with a cup of hibiscus or whatever the case may be for 5 hours and just sit and feel and allow yourself to listen. Whereas if I did a ceremony for 5 hours where I forced you all to sit and feel, people would start going crazy. Right? It would be like an intense vipassana. Well, I can't talk, I can't dance, I can't go crazy. This is going to kill me. But we shouldn't need so much stuff, but we have to put the stuff in because it's the only way that we can make the transition in the West. So you have yin ceremonies and you have yang ceremonies. Ideally, they should be a combination of both. So every ceremony should have plenty of space for you to go deep into your own communion with the plant spirit. Because if you spend the whole time just watching people dance or dancing yourself, your attention is outward. You can't actually receive the message. Right? And so, yeah, people need to commune, they need to talk, but it's important to also have at least an hour, hour and a half of yin time with the plant.
Yeah. Awesome.
And I also, the other thing with ceremony is it's taken us 16 years to be proficient in ceremony. And this is subtle ceremonies.
Yeah.
And so people think I'm just going to light a fire, print out the 4 directions from the internet, read that out, bang the drum, and it's easy, right? And easy if you can't see, if you don't understand energy and you don't know what you're doing. But I really wish it were treated with more respect and people actually realize that you're working with spirit. And when you work with spirits, not only are you responsible for the spirit, you're responsible for how everyone in the room interacts with those spirits. So if someone in that room is harvested energetically because of the spirits that you called in, or is possessed, or something happens, it's actually your karmic responsibility. And so that was a lesson for us because, you know, stuff like that happened in our ceremonies and we had to do massive ceremonies of reconciliation for stuff that went down that shouldn't have gone down if we had known that this is actually, even at a subtle plant level, bloody serious work and should not be taken lightly.
Yeah, well, you mentioned to me in our chat a couple of weeks ago, you know, about learning from areas that you've made mistakes in.
Absolutely.
You know, again, it's trial and error with some of these practices, no doubt.
Look, I've made every mistake in the book, in the spiritual book. All right, and I call it my bozo moments. I have been a bozo many times. The thing is, though, I had been trained. So I had teachers, but you're only as good as your teacher. And this is what people don't know. Even though I had been trained and I thought I'd been trained, I was trained for 8 years to do some of this work. I had teachers. I did this, I did the other. If a teacher doesn't share some key information, you're going to discover that yourself the hard way. Right? And so the way we do our trainings is a reconciliation with my younger self. So every training I deliver, or by myself or with Joe or Andrew, Joanna, I basically say, okay, what had I wished someone had told me 10 years ago that would have made all the difference? That's the information we share. So we share a lot of the gaps missing in shamanic trainings at the moment. And they're missing not because anyone's out to hurt people. They're missing because people actually don't know or are not aware. Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate bodies of work, you know, that have been insightful and inspiring to myself that, you know, I could say, I wish that I had my younger self had this information, you know.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes I think, well, we need to learn through experience, and that's certainly valid and true. And sometimes even if you've just heard somebody else's experience, even if you haven't encountered that in your own, you know, worldly experience, when you do encounter it, you might have a bit of a reference point for, I've heard about this. Like I might want to just note the red flag and perhaps deal with this in a responsible way.
And we didn't have those reference points. And now that we talk about them, interestingly enough, some people are like, you're a fear mongerer. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm just preparing you. Should this ever happen to you, this is what you do. And I hadn't been prepared myself, even though I had training and I had teachers.
Can you give me?
Sorry, the re-education of Sharon Bolt, so to speak, the constant re-education of Sharon Bolt.
Can you give me an example of where somebody might have accused you of being fear-mongering and you were trying to get across like quite a serious teaching that you had learned?
Medicine wheels. Medicine wheels. Look, let's put it, how do I explain this? If you come from a lineage that has performed magic in the past, right, so there's some kind of magical lineage within you and you start working with spirit work, it's going to have a certain level of command, even if you don't have the experience. So things are going to start happening quickly. Whereas if you have come from a family that has had no magical lineage whatsoever, you may be in the spirit world for 30 years before something starts to happen, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm really want to specialize in working with people that know they have some kind of magical lineage, so that when they start doing the work, they know that it already carries some ancestral power. And so because it carries some ancestral power and it carries some command already, you have to be careful with the medicine wheels that you open, with what you serve to people, with how you work with lineages, with what you pull into the space, for your safety and the safety of the participants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, when we were talking a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about something that appears within shamanism quite a lot, and that's like ancestors and ancestral journeying and things like family constellations and whatnot. How do you weave all of that into your trainings?
Well, we retrained as family constellators.
Okay.
I've retrained, so that's another one you can add to the list. I've retrained as a family constellations practitioner as well, because I felt that the shamanism work out there was missing some of that key family constellation work and vice versa. Mm-hmm. But let's go back to ancestors for a moment, because I'm quite passionate about this, and I'm number one bozo in this area. Mm-hmm. When you're younger, and when I was younger, we always want to follow the current trendy lineage. So we'll do Native American trainings, and we'll do, South American trainings, and we'll do all sorts of work with lineages that are not our own.
Yeah.
Okay. And the big thing that happened to me, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, I was wearing gear from another lineage, and I was doing some work in the UK. And thank God for this moment, because my own ancestors came in and said, "You are an idiot. We want you to take all that off. That's not your lineage. You have no right messing with that lineage. I don't care if they say that you do. We are your ancestors, and we are the ones that are going to teach you the goods." And from that moment forward, when I put everything away that wasn't part of my lineage, my own lineage opened up and the real teaching began. It's not to say that you can't join another lineage. It's to say, work on your own lineage first, become powerful in that lineage. And then if you don't want it, if you really don't want to honor the blood where you came from, then say, "You know what, guys, I don't want to honor this." Be really respectful. I don't want any part of this. Do I have a blessing to go and work with a new lineage? Because somehow you guys don't cut it. See if you can actually turn around and say that to your ancestors. Because that's exactly what people are doing, even though they're not saying it.
Yeah. Are you talking, when you're talking about ancestral lineages, are you talking specifically about your genetic bloodlines?
Yes.
Okay.
Genetic bloodlines. They're the most powerful within you. And it's quite offensive to them. Imagine you're the ancestor now, and you look at your descendants 5 generations down. And you're, I did all this, work. And what? You're going to this country, praying to this new God I've never heard of? Mm-hmm. What is this? So it would be polite for one of them to turn around and say, "Hey, Carlos ancestor, thank you for all the work that you did, but we have found a system we resonate with more. Mm-hmm. So thank you. Let us continue with this new path." And if you have that recognition, you're more likely to just let it go. By the way, this applies to religious stuff. If you come from a hugely Catholic background or whatever background, and the ancestors were very religious, you have to explain to them. I had to explain to them, "Look, guys, those that were religious in my lineage, I fought with the devil. I appreciate that you were religious and that was your faith, but I'm doing things differently. And there are spirit people in our lineage who did this work before me. So let me connect to them.
Yeah.
Once you explain things, then there's no trouble. But when you don't explain things and just do it out of arrogance, that's when you start having problems.
Mm-hmm.
And the problems don't show up in an obvious way. You have to learn to connect the energetic dots, right? Something may happen in a cacao ceremony, but it shows up in your life, in your relationship, or in your day job. It doesn't always show up within the ceremony. So it's really important as spirit workers that we learn to connect energetic dots and why this is happening. What spiritual thing did I do incorrectly that is now resulting in this?
Mm-hmm. I found, during doing my counselling degree that, it's quite fascinating just even looking at the family constellations that we have, in a couple of generations, and why perhaps we are the way that we are because of, our grandparents or great-grandparents and what they've experienced, and how that's influenced our family dynamics,
Absolutely. I mean, family constellations has taken over my clinic.
Yeah.
Like literally, they warned us at the training. They're like, if you open up to this and you start doing this, it's take over your clinic, and it's taken over my clinic. And now I incorporate it within ceremonial work and within workshop as well. So it's always there.
Yeah.
It's extremely powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've spoken previously about the work of Michael Harner, who seems to have been one of the bridges from traditional pagan, earth-based shamanic societies into sort of a Western context. And I know that you did some of his training or the courses that were designed for that. Can you share a bit about that experience?
Absolutely. So we did, they have quite a few workshops before the 3-year training.
Mm-hmm.
So we did all the workshops, and then we did the 3-year training, the diploma. And I loved it. It's amazing. It's a great journey into core shamanism. Where I think it falls a little bit is that Michael Harner was a genius, and he had his own genius consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew, I think just you're born with this sometimes, he knew how to work with spirit, right? And so in that course, they really show you how to work with spirit, but you have to work it out yourself. They don't say A plus B equals 1 plus 1 equals 2. So I think unless you have the guidance of someone else that is willing to explain some things to you, you may miss a lot of key points, because their ongoing reply is ask the spirit. But again, the spirit can only work with your consciousness, right? And so if your consciousness has not reached that level where it understands a concept, it's very helpful when someone explains that concept to you. So it was a great training in actually connecting to the spirit world and learning how to work with the spirit world. But we still had to go and find other teachers that explained the things that were missing, that still had gaps within that system. Because every system has gaps. It's impossible to put everything into every single system. So they all have gaps.
Yeah. Yeah. Many of the the people that I've trained with over the years have have done that training of my partners previously, and it certainly informed some of the work that I've done as well. I've been reading this fascinating book recently, all about I forget the name of it, but Carlos Castaneda, because he was one of the influences, the first influence for me into shamanism in some ways, and there's a lot of debunking of his work and suggestion, that he was the stories he'd made them up, and really fascinating. I have no problem accepting that he probably did make a lot of those up, and there's lots of contradictions and whatnot that people can point out, and yet it seemed like he was taking bits and pieces from very authentic bodies of work, and some of the teachings from them are still authentic regardless of whether they actually happened or not, as far as I'm concerned. And having met some of the people that were cohorts of his in person, you know, through my own journeys through Mexico and whatnot, you know, like it's really made me wonder about him. And again, he was, regardless of the truth of it, he was very much a catalyst and sparked the whole revolution for a generation that became interested in plant medicines and shamanic teachings.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, whether it's true or not, it's whose truth. Right? You can take lots of different concepts from the culture, combine them into a story that gets told so many times, it becomes its own energy.
Yeah.
And what it became, its own magnetic energy that we were all attracted to. And I owe my introduction to plant medicine to those books, because at the time I was working in advertising, and my colleague, Spanish colleague, and I'll mention him, Will Acha, in case you're watching this, he started reading Carlos Castaneda, and he was the one coming up to me going, Sharon, you got to read this. We have to do peyote. We have to go to Mexico. Like, we have to do this. And I was like, oh, whatever. And he just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And so he was a catalyst in the introduction to all of that. So I love those books.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, amazing work.
You just mentioned that word culture, you know, and it reminds me, I think it was Terence McKenna who said, you know, that culture is like your operating system, and like a computer analogy. And I was wondering how you, you know, given that we live in a Western culture and a lot of these concepts of shamanism may be taken from different cultures and whatnot, how do you incorporate that in, or work with a person's culture that they might be familiar with, or anything that comes to mind around that concept of culture and shamanism?
Yeah, let's divert a little, because we're going back to the plants.
Yeah.
The plants have culture too, especially when you deal with their astral versions. And so you kind of want to speak to the the plant, that spirit beyond culture.
Okay.
You think most plants came to this planet from other planets, and there's a version of you, Carlos, that's soul, oversoul, beyond culture. And so that's who you want to communicate with in the spirit world. Everything that is beyond culture, because it's infinitely more powerful. In terms of culture, we're all, there's no point denying that we're influenced by culture, and that we have programs and belief systems that are culturally based. And so you have to work with them and around them. Okay, so maybe at a very base example, you know, sometimes with spirit animals, kids have never seen an animal. They've never been to a zoo. They've never been overseas. A spirit animal for them is a Pokemon.
Yep.
Right? And when you say your spirit animal, they come back and go, Pokemon or whatever cartoon, or find a spirit ally. It'll be one of the Avengers. And at the end of the day, they're all in the astral, and they're all their own consciousness as well.
Yeah.
Not necessarily benevolent, but they're there. And so you kind of have to let people use their imagination until, again, they can cross that bridge and the spirit world becomes real.
Yeah, well, that concept of archetypes comes up, I guess, you know, and in some of the training that I've done over the years, you know, you have to learn to trust whatever may be presented to you, you know, and learn to get out of your way about judging how stupid that might seem, you know, because you might feel intuitively that you have to share something, not knowing why, and it might be very pertinent for somebody else that you're sharing that with, you know. So
absolutely. Learn to trust. And when you're working with people all the time and in groups, slowly you learn to trust. And now, no matter how crazy it seems, I'll just, if it's appropriate, I'll say it.
Yeah.
Because I know that if it's in the field, I'll give you a silly example. We're doing a drum journey training.
Yeah.
And during the drum journey training, it was like a Jack and the Beanstalk, and the beans were growing, and I was just like, what is this in the room? And I went, I don't know, guys, when I was drumming, it felt like Jack and the Beanstalk. And they were going, us too. There were two people in the room going, yes, it felt like there was a beanstalk that started to grow. Anyway, this was just all very weird.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the training, someone found a dried bean in the room.
Mm.
So the energy was there, and that's what the energy we picked up on. If I'd never mentioned it, I would have never known that there was a bean in the room. The other people who had this vision wouldn't have trusted. I would have thought we're just making it up. But the bean confirmed that we were tuning into the energy correctly.
Mm.
And so now, no matter how silly it is, I just mention it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it reminds me of one experience that I had at some little festival that I was at, where somebody was doing an animal spirit workshop, and doing a drumming sort of meditation for us to encounter our animal totem. And as soon as they started drumming, this big wind came, and I lay down and I sort of instantly went to sleep, but it felt like I just soared out of my body on this wind and became this eagle. And of course, when we came back from that journey, and the rational mind kicks in and starts going, oh yeah, like how original, your spirit animal is an eagle, But then, there was a little girl sitting next to me, and I just looked down at her, and she pulled her shirt down, and she had like one of those stick-on tattoos of an eagle right in the middle of her chest. And I was like, okay, well, here's the confirmation.
Getting into the field. And thank you for mentioning spirit animals, because I think one of my little bugbears is, in a lot of shamanic trainings, it's like the weekend trainings are like, meet your spirit animal, meet your plant, meet this, learn how to, like, they fit a million things into a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not much depth. And it feels like a lot of stuff, a lot of trainings, you go in, meet your spirit animal. And I went to the same trainings, meet your spirit animal. And then eventually I thought there must be more to this meet your spirit animal business. You know what? I'm just going to have this animal and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so this is asking questions. And it's taken us on a huge journey. And we have our spirit animal workshop, and it's something like 250 slides of things and how to work with your spirit animal.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you that think, I've got a spirit animal, I'm done there is so much more to spirit animal work, to plant spirit work, to spirit ally work, to archetype work. We can go on and on and on and on. So there's nothing wrong with keeping it at a really base level as a spirit animal, but if you want to go deep, this is endless, and this is why I love it.
You mentioned the term oversoul before, and I guess that triggered my memory that I always like to ask whoever I'm interviewing about the concept of the higher self to them, because my body of work, Future Self Dreaming, really is all about helping people to get in touch with what might be termed the higher self. And so I was wondering, what your definition of that is, or what your experience of it is, and how it may inform the body of work that you bring into the world.
I believe we have a higher self, but in the last couple of years, I've come across the concept of your mythical self.
Mm-hmm.
So before, back in your ancestral lineage, you had a mythical ancestry, and you were part of a mythical lineage of beings, whatever that may be for you. So once I connected to that mythical ancestry, everything started to change again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so you can connect to your blood ancestry, you can connect to your mythical ancestry, you can connect to your celestial ancestry. It's never ending. And then when you're fully connected with all the different ancestral realms we have access to, you can start connecting to your spirit self, which we know as the higher self, which is the immortal being. Right? I don't worry too much about oversouls or that kind of thing. I just know that I have an immortal spirit that has a physical body, or may have multiple physical bodies operating even in this dimension right now. So that could be a version of the oversoul. And we're having this experience together. But as one aspect of its physical existence, I felt that the connection to all the different ancestral elements of it facilitated a deeper connection to the spiritual aspect of it. It was like a fully being plugged into all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to plug you in, Carlos. We're going to plug you in.
You know, one of the things that I like about you, Sharon, your personality is very childlike and very playful, you know, like, and I think that helps you to access, these states of consciousness that we're talking about, helps you to get beyond judgment by getting in touch with that childlike state.
That's the only way to do it. So you get it. Your little Carlos knows exactly what's going on, has access to all of that. So if you let little Carlos is the true spirit worker. If you let little Carlos lead the way, you get access to all of it. But you have to play, you have to use your imagination. The work is serious, but we are silly. We're allowed to be ridiculous, right? And full of nonsense, but we take the work seriously. And that's how I keep a balance with it all. So I make back jokes, but the work as a body of work is serious, because you want to know what you're doing when you're working across multiple realities at once and you're working across multiple dimensions at once. You want to have good allies. You want to know the road. You want to prepare well, and you want to know what you're doing.
I know that you do shamanic work that may be specific to women as well. Do you want to share anything about that?
Yeah, you're very good at remembering all these things. One of my, and I'm going to be starting to do men next year, by the way. I've been called to work with men now. So I'm like, what? How? Okay. So with women, most of the work is around the womb center. And so there's a lot of womb work out there, but not many aspects of the womb work cover the cleansing part. If you look at any shamanic ritual, what's the first thing they do?
I don't know about any of them. There's a multitude of things.
They cleanse you. They cleanse you. They bake you. They bathe you. They consecrate you. There's an element of cleansing first before you do the deeper spirit work. So a lot of my women's program is cleansing the womb first before you do the deeper connection work. So lots of women come to me and say, I want my womb activated. I want this to happen. And I sound really boring because I'm like, there's no point your womb stargate being activated if it's full of ancestral programming, psychic debris, past partners, negative entities, negative emotions, abortions you haven't cleared, miscarriages, the list goes on and on and on. So until you can clear all that from the womb, then we can start the awakening or activation process. And the same goes with the heart and with the pineal gland. You can't open the heart until you feel all the negative emotions that are being stored there. You can't open the pineal gland until you decalcify it and cleanse it, of all the bad things that are in our system and of all the negative programming. So the cleansing part is missing from a lot of programs, and it's what we incorporate into all our work. And it's not sexy, I know, because people just want to get into the, activate me, galactivate me. But I'm saying, have a bath first. Right? It may need to be a 3-month bath, but have a bath first.
I'm thinking of your partner, Joseph, because I really appreciate and value the shamanic tool that is the vacuum cleaner, and Joseph could in that alone.
Joseph loves vacuuming.
Yeah, he does. He's got shamanic OCD when it comes to space clearing, which is such a gift. And and I've come to, through trial and error, come to really appreciate that. I mean, even people like, what's his name, Jordan Peterson, talk about the power of just cleaning your room and having your mind, all that mind clutter out of your space, that it's a bit of a reflection of how your mind is. And I remember one time actually when I was going to take some magic mushrooms one time and found myself furiously cleaning my space for a couple of hours, setting that up, thinking I'll have this nice clean space to journey in. And then when it came to the time of the evening that I was going to take the mushrooms, I decided I was too tired and that I'd leave that for another time. But then all of a sudden I just sort of entered into the same kind of psychedelic space. And I realized that had been because it was part of what I feel kind of happens a lot of the time when you take psychedelics, is that there is this cleaning of your internal landscape that needs to happen first before you can enter into these expanded states of consciousness, So the power of ceremonially or otherwise cleaning your space and how that affects the rest of your being is really powerful, I know here too, like where I live in the Northern Rivers, like we've had a lot of rain the last couple of weeks and everybody's feeling the effects of mold, and when it's around, like it makes, it's all, I don't know, gives you that yucky feeling and everyone picks up on it and you want to get in and clean everything,
Completely. And I'm not OCD in physical spaces, so thank goodness Joe is.
Yep.
But I am in energetic spaces. So when you combine the two together, people always say to us, it's like we could come to space and put a finger through it and we wouldn't find any dust in this reality or the other reality. It's so squeaky clean. We've had that comment so many times. In my journey, I just saw a squeaky clean kitchen. I'm like, oh. Okay, so a lot of the women's work is getting real with the programs that women are receiving, because there's so much. I mean, there's so much bullshit in the women's healing arena. Everyone's a goddess. Everyone is this. Everyone's a priestess. After one weekend, all the magical trainings. Every single magical training, most of them are 3 years minimum. Even if you think you need 3 years minimum and you need them supervised. Okay, because this is when we get in trouble. Every time I've been unsupervised, I go crazy, just like everyone else. You need someone, and it's not your friends, who tell you the truth. Right? You need someone that's going to be like, you're being a spiritual wanker right now. Rein it back in. That's not real. That's your ego. That's your imagination. You have an entity right now. Sort shit out, right? And I've got people like that in my life now, and it's really important. And so when we do women's work, it's really important that we're real about what it takes to be a priestess, right? What it takes to actually do this work, run women's work that's very clean and it's not re-traumatizing, but actually empowering to women. So we're not creating the same usual spaces where we all have to look a certain way, act a certain way, and be a certain way. It's like, how do we become authentic and be who we are, even though it may feel vulnerable, right? We're very real. I've got a new name for them. Tell me what you think, because I'm like, oh, this is going to be too much. I want to call them no-nonsense spaces, even though I am the queen of nonsense in my real life. In the spirit world, I want to say this is a no-nonsense space. Does that make sense to you?
Sure.
Is that going to be too triggering for everyone else?
Well, talking about, that concept of spiritual bypassing a few weeks ago, and how prevalent it is within social circles and spiritual scenes and whatnot. Anything that you have to share about that concept?
Look, I've got the diploma in spiritual bypassing. I probably have a doctorate. Right? I'm just lucky that
Yep.
I've either had the friends or the spirit team or the ancestors that keep throwing me back down on the floor going, you're not going to bypass this one. So it's the thing we all want to do. And if we can get away with it, we're going to get away with it as long as we can, because it's pleasurable and it means no pain. Right? And then you get to a point, and that's happened to me a few times. The last one was maybe, I think it was 3 years ago. I talk about this quite openly in my women's circles. I'm just running away from grief.
Mm.
Just running away from grief. I have to sit with this grief. And so I took a month off. It was my grieving month. I'm going to grieve everything. Childhood, my dodgy teenage years, my wasted 20s, my ridiculous 30s. I'm just going to keep grieving all the things I need to grieve.
Yeah.
Until I come out of it. And it didn't last a month, it lasted 3 weeks. I felt like a brand new person. Right. And so that was a huge reminder for me. And it's always coming back. You have to sit in your shit and feel it. And so I really want our ceremonies to be spaces where people can sit in their shit and feel it. And not try to run away from it and be okay with it. And this is the magic of subtle plants. They're not going to take you off into the universe, right? They're going to force you to feel. And this is what happens in cacao ceremonies. Cacao forces you to feel, but as soon as people start feeling, what do they do in most ceremonies? Let's start the dance now. Drink it, dance. Right? And so the dance, look, I love the dance, don't get me wrong. It makes you focus on everything else, so you're not feeling it. Right? But we need spaces where you're like, no, you're going to sit down and feel the thing.
It's interesting, you know. You're just reminding me of a cacao acupuncture dance party I went to a few weeks ago, and as is often the case when entering like a ceremonial space, a lot of the time I've come to be mindful of what's happening in my internal world well before entering that, you know, because it's like those internal wheels are already spinning, and you know, then you arrive at the event, and then there's obviously the integration of things that happen afterwards. But oftentimes, like we can miss like what might be really important stuff in the lead up to attending an event, even a festival that I went to a few weeks ago. I'm always mindful of those things, or things like, you know, the celestial alignments, eclipses, solstices, equinoxes and things, you know, that they are sort of energetic processes that were being put through in the lead up to those. But there was quite a lot of anger and whatnot that I had related to some work-related issues that became quite amplified as I journeyed towards the field where that cacao ceremony was taking place.
Yeah, because the ceremony will amplify what's already going on within you. Right, and then you bring in the plant spirit, and it's going to amplify it some more. Right, so everything's amplified, and so then it gives you an amazing opportunity to be in that field of no time and unity consciousness, and actually feel it all, and release it all, and be in that space. So that's why I'm so passionate about these spaces being clean and well held, so that you leave better off than what you came in.
Yes.
That's the aim anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's important, you know, because as we've seen, like, I guess in my counselling practice, one of my intentions for that was being able to help people that have perhaps had big transpersonal awakenings that may have been initiated through plant medicines, because a lot of the time you see people quite unintegrated from having journeyed with these psychedelic plants, and they still need work to integrate parts of themselves that may have been blown open from their unconscious or very unintegrated as a result of those journeys.
Soul loss is very common in master plant ceremonies, and I'm developing a new way now of fully checking with a person if they should be doing these ceremonies at all with anyone.
Yeah.
So we check all aspects of the physical body, energy body, mental, emotional, because when someone comes to me and says, I want to do this, we do the checks just to make sure that the person can actually cope with what's coming.
Yeah.
And I actually say to people now, if you really want this, go overseas, because you going overseas is part of the initiation and part of the journey, right?
Yes.
You just get it willy-nilly on the weekend easily. There's no initiation process there. And so if you actually make the effort and go overseas and do it in a different setting and put in the time, put in the money, put in the effort, and do the diets, actually commit properly, you're more likely to have a genuine initiation.
Yeah, I've certainly found that in my own travels over the years, that sometimes that getting out of your comfort zone, out of the culture that you're used to, as in the same way that you were talking at the very beginning of this presentation about breaking down our ego's comfort zones and defense mechanisms and whatnot, is that, taking those journeys can often do that and lead us to big inner awakenings as we're externally traveling as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we do a little plant spirit ceremonialist training in Bali for plant ceremony. And everyone goes, why don't you do it in Australia? I'm like, you can't do it in Australia. You got to go to where the plants grow. Cacao grows in Bali. Blue lotus grows in Bali. And you got to sit in a different space and learn how to work with a different land and be aware of lineages and receive the initiations. If we did it in Australia down the road, you wouldn't appreciate it as much. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've for all my stuff. I've traveled for all my initiations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You incorporate dowsing into your workshops and things as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
If you're a spirit worker, you need to learn how to dowse. Because it's a way of getting the conscious mind out of the way. Okay? And so by dowsing, you can check. You can just double check. Am I being deceived? Is this true? Is this real? And there's ways that you can dowse without you having any influence on it whatsoever. So obviously you get, am I being deceived? Yes. It's annoying and it's triggering, but it forces you to dig deeper. And so dowsing was my first love, and it's still one of my biggest loves when it comes to spiritual work, because it can be from a very basic finding out if you're intolerant to wheat to using dowsing for high-level magical practice. As in, clearing negative beings from the field, cleansing things. So it has a full spectrum, right? And if you haven't learned how to dowse, Carlos, you got to do it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I've done some dowsing.
Every single day.
Yep.
Every single day.
Yeah, I've certainly appreciated some of the dowsing courses that I've done along the way, and I know that they, some big oil companies and whatnot still use professional dowsers to find deposits of oil and minerals and things like that. And I think one of the best ways that it was described to me was, your body becoming like a conduit with the earth, and learning to trust the body, and that things like copper rods or pendants and whatnot are great tools, but they're ultimately just telling you what your body wisdom already knows, and that at a certain point you can let go of the tools and just trust your body.
Well, the first thing we teach in our dowsing course is the body as a pendulum. So we show you how to body dowse, right? And body dowsing then is there with you for life. And it's the biggest thing you can trust. It's a big hint. Should I do that weekend workshop? Should I go to that plant medicine ceremony? Should I do this? Body dowse it. I'm going to tell you straight away, because your body knows best.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, well, it's certainly, I guess, in my own experience and interactions with others, it can be, the body can be so dismissed or denied in our culture. We put ourselves in very stressful situations a lot of the time for various logical, rational reasons, to our own detriment. And we've learned to disconnect from the wisdom of our body. So like relearning how to connect to that body wisdom is really important. Certainly things like craniosacral therapy, has been a great practice for me, in different forms of body work and dancing and just being in nature, using plant medicines, all of those things that develop more connection and presence to the body. It's really important.
Absolutely.
Mm.
So one thing that people forget is, even with shamanic drum journeys, instead of going outward, go inward.
Mm.
Go have a look around your body, like a little detective. Talk to your organs.
Yes.
Talk to your blood. See what's really going on there. See where the feelings are being held. They're a lot more valuable to go inwards first than going exploring out there.
Mm. Yeah, I like that concept of, what do you call it, body dowsing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get a body douse first, and when the body dowsing is locked down, then you use the pendulum, because obviously it's sometimes quicker and you're in a healing session and you can just get it out and it starts working with your command. But body dowsing is really the way to go for everything.
Mm.
Yeah.
I remember in the chat we had a few weeks ago, you were talking about the concept of the nervous system going through adjustments and alignments. What were you referring to exactly there?
Oh, okay. Everything in our society is nervous system stress at the moment. Okay, and so it's really important that ceremony moving forward actually is nourishing to the nervous system. And this is why I love the subtle plants, because you can have a really powerful ceremony that doesn't throw your nervous system out, it actually nourishes you, that doesn't deplete Jing. Right? That's so important. I think we forget that. Everything out. It's like time to go in. So just like, yin yoga is so popular, it's like, let's bring yin ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. I think that's what I said. I can't remember anyway. That was 3 weeks ago, Carlos.
I can't remember the context. I know that you like a good spiritual modcon as well.
Yes. Yes, I do.
As do I. What have you been using, or what would you recommend in terms of spiritual modcons at the moment?
Are you mean spiritual technology tools and gadgets?
Yeah. Or, we could label it spiritual, but it could just be health, nutrition, how you want to frame it. But a friend of mine once named it spiritual modcon, because I had quite a few gadgets and things around my house.
You have so many gadgets. You and I are the worst with, healing beds, this, that, and the other. Look, I think Kate has one, that chi machine.
Yes.
I really want to get one. What do you think? Is it worth it?
My one that I just last night put a photo on my laptop to get a new one, because my old one that I'd had for 10 years or something broke. And they're amazing. Like, I love them. I would often fall asleep. Think anything that's giving the lymphatic system a good shake up is awesome.
That's
and
right.
I know
it's called the chi wobbler. Is that right?
Yeah. Zen Chi machine. Yeah.
Okay, so that's on my list.
Yeah.
But
you haven't got one of those.
I'm actually ashamed to say I have a crazy amount of things in the healing room, like lasers, magnets, Aurasoma guns that I never use. Right. So if I've stopped buying as much tech, and my current, let's call it, little addiction is rare essential oils. So the latest one I got in the post the other day was absinthe, which is the special wormwood they use to make absinthe, and it smells amazing. So I've been collecting the essential oils you really can't get from, doTERRA, Young Living in Australia. Those rare smells from around the world. That's my latest spiritual mod one of the moment.
Yeah. I'll have to ask my friend Dr. Nick Berry of Essential Oil Wizardry if he has worked with that one. It's probably giving you flashbacks to your marketing days, hey, after work.
Yes.
Absent.
I love that. In fact, one of the things I do a lot of, which I've started incorporating, again, in the last 5 years, is alcohol is part of a lot of our ancestral lineages. And, you got me into vodka and Damiana, and I didn't think anything of it. And anyway, long story cut short, one of my spirit guides loves vodka. And when I started working with the spirit guide, I wake up in the morning going, oh, God, I really fancy some vodka. And it wasn't me. And I was trying to work out where it came from. And then when I worked it all out, connecting the dots, because if I hadn't known any better, I would have just started drinking, right? Yep. So I connected the dots, and this particular guide wanted vodka in ceremony. So I started incorporating ceremonial vodka. And then slowly, ceremonial mead. And the next one is ceremonial absinthe. And so that's why I got the absinthe essential oil, because and the ceremonial absinthe has been both the two spirits that work with it. They've been requesting the ceremony for 4 years, and I've been putting it off, and they're like, Sharon, it's happening. So I'm like, okay, bring on the absinthe ceremony. And just to be clear, everyone, we don't get drunk. It's like a 5-10 ml amount, but spirit in its pure form opens up spirit. And so it's a great way of opening the pathways to spirit communication in ceremony. So I am a big fan of ceremonial alcohol. Yeah.
Well, as you know, like I stopped drinking when I was 19, and while over the last couple of years I have occasionally had a drink or two, it's not my thing, and I despise sort of alcoholism and whatnot. But I also, in part of my, my journey with plant spirits, have come to appreciate the power of alcohol and the different effects that different spirits or alcohols have because of the plants that are used. Like it's a very different effect having a shot of tequila, high quality tequila from cactus has on you than drinking, a wheat-based beer. There was, that spirit that I think's, or the drink that comes out of Bolivia called agua, that has coca leaf in it and about 37 other different herbs. Just having a nip of that, to get that effect and feel the medicine of those herbs is quite profound.
Amazing. I had a whiskey Palo Santo in Peru. Amazing. Next level.
Yeah.
Right? Unbelievable. So, I mean, alcohol, people know I love a drink every now and then. I love alcohol in ceremony. It's a lost art. And you brought back respectfully, because it's a big part of what we know and what our ancestors knew.
Yeah, it's something that I want to speak to my friend Ray Thorpe that developed the Happy High Herb shops, because that's where that recipe for making the Damiana vodka came from, and he uses that in his elixir bar drink formulas, and that Damiana, it's the biggest selling herb that they have in the Happy High Herb stores because of the euphoria and the mild aphrodisiac qualities that it has, whether you're drinking it as a tea or smoking it in a smoking mix. I know people that have used that with cannabis before, allegedly.
Everything in this conversation has been allegedly. Let's just get that in there. This is an alleged conversation.
There's a lot of allegations that are flying around the room. The use of Damiana and some of these other sort of euphoric herbs can really take that paranoid element out of the use of cannabis as well.
And again, let's talk about that for a moment. If you get paranoid on cannabis, has anyone ever thought maybe it's not the plant of your lineage? Maybe it's an ancestral plant for you? Maybe you're not supposed to be working with it, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe your body can't cope with it at the moment. And so I really encourage people to find their actual ancestral plants and only work with those. And most of the people that come and see me for sessions, they may say, oh, Sharon, I want to work with X. And really, there's one thing we all have in common that most of our ancestral lineages have worked with. And I think that's the place to start in a country that deems this safe. And what do you think that is?
What the common plant is that we've all got?
It's got its own kingdom. Mushrooms.
Of course. And, I knew that it would be really obvious once you stated it.
Pretty much every lineage, the Celts, the Eastern Europeans, the South Americans, the Central Americans, the Australians, everyone has worked with
mushrooms. Well, you'd be aware that I did the interview with our friend Jules Serendipity a few weeks ago.
You mentioned it. So if that's the main plant that you're aware of, maybe that's a good place to start. If you really need to do that in a safe country, in a safe place, with people who know that they're doing, and let's put all the caveats in there, versus with something else, right? And so those things need to be considered as well. So if a plant's making you paranoid, it's making you sick, it's not making you think properly, whatever the case may be, do I actually have a right to work with this plant? Yeah. Is it part of my ancestral lineage? Are we even supposed to be in this relationship together, or am I forcing a relationship? It's like forcing cannabis, and then you're getting paranoid. It's like being in a toxic relationship. You're forcing a relationship that shouldn't be there. So it's damaging you both.
Given that we live in Australia and we're talking about plants, have you had much to do with sort of Indigenous Australian wisdom and the use of plants for healing or psychedelic journeys or whatnot from this culture?
I did have an Indigenous Australian man give me something. But I never actually used it. Okay. I felt that the energy of the gift was enough. So I gave it back to the land. And I guess the biggest learning for me in being in Australia and coming to the new country is, and learning this from family constellations perspective as well, not just from a shamanism perspective. If every refugee or immigrant like myself who came to this country had the honor and the privilege to be part of a smoking ceremony, it would make all the difference in the world. I actually feel that it should be compulsory if the original people agreed to this, to smudge every refugee and immigrant that came to this land. Because the land has its own protocols, different protocols depending on which country you're in. And those protocols, if they're respected as you move into the land, then we start honoring relationship from the get-go. And so a lot of us have magical lineages, and we're bringing a lot of different magic to this land. And I think it's really important to be respectful of that. And we always ask permission of the spirit of the land. Am I allowed to be here? Am I allowed to practice this? Blah, 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 blah. So wanted to honor that I'm in this land, and I did a trip to Ayers Rock and an Aboriginal camp near there a couple of years ago for 2 weeks, just to say thank you for letting me be here. But I do acknowledge it's not my lineage, and it's not something I should be touching or messing with, but something I have deep respect for. So leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's interested me that one of our national emblems for Australia The acacia plant is full of DMT and was potentially used by Indigenous people in the same way that perhaps it has been used in South America for ayahuasca journeys.
Absolutely. And, I don't know how they're doing it here. I do know acacia is very popular in Taiwan as well, and Hawaii, and they do a lot of ceremonies in those lands too. But I think from my limited understanding of Aboriginal culture, because they are in dream time, they're connected anyway. Right? So how much they have needed or not needed, who knows? But the elder that I met, and I don't know if this is true or not, this was just what he shared with me. They have a very specific in his country, within Australia, of initiating people into medicines. And before you get to the acacia, there were a few mushroom paths you had to take. And he talked about some mushrooms that I've never come across or ever seen that apparently they take.
Yeah, right.
So I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. But I didn't, ask more questions. I was just so grateful to have had a little glimpse into that. And that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, I really wish that when I had been a refugee in this country, I had been introduced to that in some way, so I would have known how to respect it properly. Yeah. And you can reconcile that with family constellations, and so it's one of the biggest bits of work I do at the moment. After reconciling my lineage coming into this country, whenever I have someone who's foreign, we do the rituals to connect them to this land in the most appropriate way for both lineages. And the minute that happens, Carlos, everything changes.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like they finally land.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can relate to that, just even traveling and connecting to different geography around the planet, for sure.
Absolutely.
Like how different land masses feel quite different, like Australia has got a very powerful grounded earth energy, that you experience in the personalities of many of the people that were born here,
Absolutely. It's such a special land. So grateful to be here. But as I've retrained in magic work and shamanic work, I look back at my time here going, oh, wow, I wish I knew a lot of these things beforehand.
Yeah.
I wish I had these protocols beforehand and being more respectful and more honoring. And so if you're doing shamanic work in this land, whether you're Australian or not, I really encourage you to learn more about how to do this work properly.
You one thing that you mentioned the other week to me as well was the big, I guess, change in your work that resulted from connecting with some of the druids or witchcraft teachers over in the UK. What happened?
Absolutely. When we were looking for new teachers, the ones that were going to fill in the gaps, it was key and crucial that we found people who had trained in magical lineages for a long time. All right, because there's a lot of people teaching after one workshop of attendance nowadays, and people never check how long has this person been doing this, how much experience do they have, how much do they really have to share, or are they parroting the information? So when I, let's say, renounced all the ancestral lineages that weren't mine, and as soon as that happened, new spiritual teachers came in and new physical teachers came in, and they filled in the gaps. And so it's a mixture of, I had someone recently in my, I have a 1-year mentoring program, and I call it the Galactic Coven. And they were like, oh, we're surprised at how much witchcraft is in this program. But there's shamanism in this too. And there's magic work. I actually don't know what to call it, Carlos, because at the end of the day, I'm just working with the magic of my lineage and encouraging other people to do the same. And so we're just connecting to threads of, let's call it magical consciousness that we're sharing with each other, but they're not appropriated. All of this, it's not coloring by numbers, shamanism or magic work. It's you going into the spirit world, receiving the teachings directly, the rituals directly, the ceremonies directly, and then bringing them back to this reality. And that's work versus going, oh yeah, I'm going to do that just to set a fire, put the disco music on and here's a ceremony. No, it's going into the spirit world and bringing the information back. So yeah, it's a consciousness explorer, but without the use of any additional help except a medicine drum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. You know, I was thinking about what we were talking about before in terms of experience. I remember going on a shamanic men's training many years ago, and being the first firekeeper for that experience, and just noticing how the element of fire was responding to what was happening in the teepee, and as very poignant comments were made by different people around, you know, the fire might start raging or popping or whatnot, and you know, it was a real experiential encounter with the spirit of that alchemical element, if you want to call it that. And yeah, it is one thing to read about these types of things, but the direct transmission and experience of that's another. Yeah.
And if you think of how long it takes you to get to know just a normal human being, how long have we known each other now? 6 to 7 years?
I don't know too many normal human beings.
Right, so we've known each other 6-7 years.
Sure.
Something like that. And you used to come down to Melbourne and stay with us and for a few days. So, you know, we got to know you well enough.
Yeah.
But even after 6-7 years, I'm pretty sure there's a lot I don't know about you.
Definitely.
Right? The same with the spirit world. Right? Even if I've known X amount of spirits for 7 years, how well do I really know them? Right? This is a never-ending path, and it has so much depth. And I'm going to sound like a broken record, but you got to go into the ocean, and you got to keep going and going and going and diving and diving and diving, because that's the only way you're going to get the experience.
I remember you talking to me about when people would encounter a spirit and it might freak them out and they'd want to return to their usual operating system.
Absolutely. A lot of times, you know, we encourage people to use their imagination, and then eventually it becomes real. If you show up enough, the spirit world, where it takes 1 year or 3 years, will go, oh God, there's Carlos showing up again with his little offering. Let's just do something. This is just getting embarrassing. Can one of you just do something to him so that he knows there's something here? Right? And the spirit may come and, I don't know, do something to you, perhaps put their hands on you. And that's a choice that you make. You either freak out and run away and go back to the church, or you go, oh, this shit is real. I'm glad I've taken my time, and now I can go at a pace that works for me. Yeah. I get so many people. I even had one person today. I really want to do this work, but I don't want to encounter any darkness.
Yeah.
Guarantee I'm not going to see any darkness. I'm like, what? I mean, there's darkness all over our planet. Right? It's a yin-yang situation. There's going to be yin-yang in the spirit world, and the astral's full of darkness. And until you have enough power, you're not going to bypass the astral. Most people, when they do plant ceremony or any kind of ceremony, don't have enough jing power to bypass the astral. So they end up in the Compton, which is the astral world, and it's a shit show, and it's dangerous, right? And so it's going to be dark.
Yeah.
Until you go do all the cleanses, do all the clearing, have enough power, can bypass the astral, and actually get to the good stuff.
Just thinking, well, thanks for telling me now, Sharon, before I was one of your spiritual guinea pigs.
I say straight to the astral. We reconcile that, Carlos. Hey, look, I was going straight to the astral as well. But again, you don't know what you don't know. Sure. And even now, after I've had so many gaps being filled in, I now know that there's a lot that I don't know. And if I hold that beginner's mind, that Taoist beginner mind, that I'm always going to be learning something new, open, then new information can keep coming in all the time, either from spirit or from human teachers.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do this work, you got to remain really open and really curious and go, I don't know.
Yeah, you got to keep the sphincter of your mind open.
100%. You can't get a constipated mind that way. It has to be open. You just had an image of like a cleansing pineal suppository going in, cleansing that pineal gland and pulling it out. Anyway, so yeah, you got to stay open. Anyway,
just because it's the logo is behind you. Can you move your head for a minute just so that I can see
the logo? It's just two dragons we found online.
Oh, okay.
We do have a dragon in our logo.
Yes.
And our logo is pretty much a representation of our Taoist training and our shamanic training. So it's a yin-yang symbol with a dragon, a feather, and a little bit of a flower of life sprinkling. I think that was your influence, Carlos. A little bit of a flower of life sprinkling after all that work. And so we're bringing together the Taoism structure, grounded, disciplined, dedicated, respectful, into shamanic training.
The concepts of dragons came up in my talk with Jules recently, and reminded me of that one of the trainings that I did with you initially. You pulled me aside and told me that there was a blue dragon coming into my life, and I think I told you that you'd watched too much Pokemon.
Look, this is one of the same things again. Everyone goes, dragon, whatever, mythical creature, whatever. And then when the dragon actually finally shows up in their life, they're like, shit, Sharon, make it go away.
Make it go away.
Like I'm some kind of, what is it, Daenerys up in the mountain going, no, come back from Carlos. He doesn't want you. He doesn't want to handle you, controlling all these dragons. If a dragon wants to come to you, or if you come to our trainings and it starts coming to you, whatever the case may be, it is going to impact your life in a massive, massive way. And I know this all sounds crazy, but once you experience it, you can't deny it.
So, again, at another one of the trainings I attended with you, I encountered a dragon, and then I dropped another attendee off at the airport the next day and pulled up next to a car that had dragon as the number plate.
Oh my God, there you go.
Okay, here it is again. That's just more confirmation of this, whatever it is. But how do you experience this dragon energy? Is there anything else you can tell me? Because it's come up actually in several of the conversations that I've had in interviews with other people as well.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, the dragons have a lot of power, and are the action spirits. In terms of mythical creatures, they really push towards action and getting things done. And so when it comes to dragon power and dragon energy, we could be working with one dragon, or we could be working with many. I find that when people first get their dragon, it's normally a baby dragon, which is representative of where they're at. And as your power grows, the baby dragon power grows with you. So it's kind of like a familiar. In witchcraft, people have a familiar, which is like a pet that they work with. It's kind of like the same thing, but the dragon is in the spirit world. However, managing a dragon takes a lot of time and energy. And it's a lifelong journey. Lifelong. So I want to say this is just not one lifetime. It's many lifetimes of managing dragons. And so imagine having a spirit guide that is very powerful, but also big. And big can mean sometimes clumsy in some ways, or an energy that's explosive as well. And people are like, oh, what's this energy, right? What's going on? Why are things so accelerated? And it's the dragon energy. So it's an energy that has to be experienced to be fully understood. I've been working with them ever since I met my first one in Wales. I was in a spiritual retreat, and it came into the room. And I actually got scared, and I thought, what the hell is that? And it walked around the room, and it sat at the edge of the bed, and it was like, I know you. And I know people listening must think, oh my God, crazy. And that's how it started. And so how long has that been now? 10 years. And I still feel that even though I feel like I know a lot about them, I'm still a baby dragon, also in training, because there is so much more to learn and discover. But if you open your mind to myth and magic, you get more synchronicities.
Yes.
Okay? You start walking, I don't want to say in different dimensions, that's not quite right. You start appreciating things in this reality that perhaps you would have missed because you didn't have the eyes to see.
Can you elaborate more on that? Because it's something, you know, that I have talked about in previous presentations as well. You know, my love of synchronicity, and you know, in some ways, it's going on all the time. You know, behind the veil, everything's synchronized and whatnot, and it's our, you know, conscious mind perhaps noticing that, you know, the perfection of creation as we encounter it. And these meaningful coincidences, as Carl Jung would describe them. And certainly in my own, I guess, in my early 20s, when I was going through a spiritual awakening and walking around like some cosmic messiah in a robe for 6 months, which my friends enjoy laughing at me about. You know, it was just endless synchronicities, and yeah, it was just blowing my mind, you know, and yeah, so I'm always fascinated in hearing, because some people, when you talk to them about this concept of synchronicity, they don't really have an experience of it, but it seems to be one of the things on the shamanic journey that as you go through this awakening, you begin to notice all of these meaningful coincidences.
100%. And to me, it just means you're on the right path. Right? If there's a coincidence that is meaningful and significant, keep going. If I start a project and there's no synchronicity for 2 or 3 weeks, delete. It is not being supported by unseen forces. Right? So I want to see evidence when I start something, whether it be a number plate with a number I'm working on, or an animal that comes out, or a message or something. I want to see evidence in this reality. What I'm working on is being supported by spirit, and it's not just in my head. And so when that starts to happen, I'm on the right track. When it doesn't start to happen, it's like, all right, that was my ego that wanted that. I'm willing to let it go. And you let it go.
As somebody, I'm trying to think of what I read the other day that was around this theme, and it was something like, you know, encountering yourself outside of yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes.
The bigger you, that you're sort of inside.
Yeah. And seeing everyone as reflections of you, so that you can be more compassionate.
Yeah, I've certainly had those experiences of, particularly after quite expansive ceremonial encounters, of feeling like I was walking around inside myself, encountering different aspects of myself. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the reactions and responses that you get from people in that state, you know. I've been reflecting on it this week, you know, after just having been to Earth Frequency Festival, that I have a great love for, you know, that you can walk around in that environment and you're constantly smiling at and hugging strangers and saying, hey, bro and sis, to everybody that you see, you know, and there's all this eye gazing going on just from walking around with one another, you know, and then you go to the Tweedhead shopping mall and you're not encountering that, you know, but it's so conducive to an expanded state of consciousness when you're in that state, you know. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And isn't it sad though that we need that state to open up?
Need the state, did you say?
Yeah, that we need to be at the festival or whatever the case may be to open up to love and connection.
Yeah. Well, I guess you could describe it as sad. Yeah. It's and at the same time, you know, like, I guess it's the beauty of those types of festivals and ceremonial encounters and whatnot that, you know, people may take some experience that they've had from that and bring the inspiration and whatnot, or the authentic relating that they're having with people in that environment into their day-to-day affairs.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
You have the earth frequency glow around you.
Yeah, well, piece of artwork that I've got behind me by amazing psychedelic artwork, Luke Brown, came back from that festival. So
wow. So it's brand new. Okay, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's been one of my favorite pieces of art, psychedelic art, for a while, but there was a nice wall hanging that I saw at the festival that I decided to purchase. So yeah, it's and you know, again, with these states of consciousness, you know, like I find looking at artwork, you know, people that have got that fantastic ability to translate what's happening in the mythological or psychedelic realms that they're encountering and bring it into this reality, you know, it can trigger these altered states of consciousness. Looking at the likes of Luke Brown's artwork that was at the Earth Frequency Festival would almost make me feel like I needed to purge, you know, because it's, you know, it's such an amazing translation of that psychedelic realm.
It is beyond phenomenal. And I mean, how many of us thought, when I go back, I'm going to draw this out? I always have plant spirits saying to me, you know, like pot plants and things, draw me. I'm like, you've seen me draw, right? Like, I had an orchid for ages that kept saying, please draw me. And I could see it in my mind clearly how she wanted to be drawn. Look, this is as good as it gets. Like this stick figure. I'm sorry, it's as good as it gets. So yeah, really deep love and respect for the artists of this world, because what a gift.
Yeah, well, you know, that they are one of the things about that festival, you know, is that I see the artists, be it the visual artists that paint or whatnot, or the musical artists, you know, they are shamans. They are ones that are influencing states of consciousness through the light and sound and frequency that they generate in their art. And again, it's probably in our society, art is underappreciated, and thankfully there's this sort of counterculture that and these festivals and things that we can attend that have these awakening effects in the same way that the great artists and alchemists throughout time have encoded shamanic alchemical principles into their great bodies of work to awaken the human spirit.
Yep, love it.
We've been ranting for
We've been talking for a long time.
A couple of hours, so maybe we should wrap things up. But
wrap things up, because I've got a client in about an hour, so it'd be good to have a little break.
I know that
I'm working tonight.
Yeah. Can you let people know who might have got through our 2-hour rant where they might be able to find you on social media? I think it's spiritualdork.com.
It'd be Spiritual Dork or bozoyetagain.com.au or crazyplantlady, not catlady.com.au. All right. Shamanicenergytraining.com.au for all the workshops and trainings in Australia, and SharonBolt.com for the private work. But if you could put those in the link, that would be greatly helpful, Carlos, in case no one gets through the first 20 minutes.
I will do that.
If you made it till the end, please put in the comments you made it till the end. If you make it till the end, I'll give you a discount at a workshop. How's that?
Boom.
Boom. Say, I made it to the end of you and Carlos's interview. Where's my discount?
Well, it's been awesome talking to you.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed chatting again, and I will see you in April.
I look forward to that.
Are you going to the festival?
We're going to Booze Fest, yeah?
Yes, we're going to Booze Fest. We're going to have the best time ever, so I will see you there.
I look forward to it.
All right. Thanks, Carlos. Bye.